You see the TV ads, you hear the radio ads where I owed the IRS $3 million and I was able to settle for $13.12. That does happen, but less than half of the offers in compromise that are submitted to the IRS are accepted.
Hi, I'm Michelle Voskuhl. I'm here today with John Neal, founder of the Neal Group in Greenfield, Wisconsin. So today's topic, IRS payment plans explained and your options if you can't pay. John, what are the most common payment options that you can work with the IRS on for people?
There are many options when you owe the IRS. One of them, naturally, is to full pay when you owe, when you file your return. If you can't pay everything, then you can negotiate what's called an installment agreement. There are various types of installment agreements that we can help you with. And sometimes you can't pay what the installment agreement says you can pay, so then you can have what's called a partial pay installment agreement. You also have the one that everybody that comes in here is talking about, and that's called an offer and compromise. You see the TV ads, you hear the radio ads where I owed the IRS $3 million and I was able to settle for $13.12. That does happen, but less than half of the offers in compromise that are submitted to the IRS are accepted. So it's a tough road to hoe. You also have a situation where the IRS isn't going to accept any kind of compromise, but you're still in a position where you can't pay. We had a client a few years ago where the husband suffered a stroke. Their house, the wife couldn't work because she was taking care of them, but they had a house that was worth $600,000 and they owed about $50,000 in taxes. The IRS said, "We understand that you can't pay us now. We're going to put you in what's called currently non-collectible status. So we're going to leave you alone. We're going to check in every so often, and when you can pay us, you'll start paying us." And then the final option is what I call the nuclear option, which is declaring bankruptcy. Bankruptcy is available for people who owe income taxes. It's not available for people who owe payroll taxes for businesses. And you can, in essence, get the IRS through the bankruptcy court to forgive income taxes except for the last 5 years. So if today, it's 2026, if you owe taxes for 2012 and there have been no adjustments or anything from the IRS has 10 years to collect from you, so you can discharge that debt.
Through bankruptcy?
Correct.
Got it. So how do you know which plan or which option makes sense?
That's where a professional like us comes in. We look at the situation, we ask the questions, we gather the information, and then we go through and determine what the best course of action is. Recently, we met with somebody who came in wanting an offer and compromise. He owed about $50,000 in total. He had a house that was worth $200,000, didn't have a mortgage on it. He had $100,000 in a retirement plan. He had $50,000 in his bank account. I just flat out told them there's no way that you're going to get an offer and compromise.
Right. You mentioned talking to a professional is the best way to do it. I know that some of the national firms that claim they can help you out, you're really talking to a salesperson who's going to close the deal with you to sign on with them. When you come to the Neal Group, you're talking to John
Right.
directly. What mistakes do people make when setting up their own IRS payment plans?
They let the IRS control the situation. I call the IRS in response to a notice that says I owe $10,000. The IRS asks me a bunch of questions and says, you can afford $1,000 a month. And I just look at it and say, okay, where in reality I can't. And we may be able to stretch the payments out so that they come to $500 a month. Or you may not have thought about certain expenses and the IRS didn't ask you, but we ask you, and we can include those expenses so that you have to pay less per month. Or in the case of an offer and compromise, you can pay less to settle your debt.
Right. So how is the Neal Group able to negotiate with the IRS on a client's behalf?
We act as a buffer between our client and the IRS. We know the rules and the regulations, what is includable, what is excludable. We know the options, so we can talk to the IRS. I remember working with a client on an offer and compromise, and the IRS worksheets showed that they could pay this debt off over 60 months, but when the actual calculation came back from the IRS, it said you have to pay us off over 24 months. And I called the IRS and I talked to the person and said, can you show me in your regulations where it says we have to pay it off over 24 months? And all of a sudden they were like, oh, we're very sorry, you can pay it off over 60 months.
Great.
Whereas a client may just go, oh, all right, I'll do what I have to do to pay it off in 24 months.
Right. So what I often find too is when we have the power of attorney, which is what you get in order to be able to communicate with the IRS directly, we also have a special line we can call. So we are able to call the preferred provider line.
Correct.
And so we talk to them directly rather than sitting on hold waiting for hours and hours. That sometimes happens with taxpayers. So I would say with the Neal Group, our approach is we customize everything to the client. Would you agree?
Yes. When you mentioned earlier talking about these national firms, we've taken over more than a few cases where somebody has gone to a national firm, and we won't name names, but you've seen them on TV. They take your $15,000 up front, say, oh, we can get you an offer and compromise, and 2 years later you haven't heard anything, and so you call them and they have lost your case, or they go, oh, we tried and we couldn't do anything. So now it's 2 years later and you haven't made any progress.
Great. So that are options for IRS payment plans. We've explained them a little bit. Come see the Neal Group if you need help setting up a payment plan.